Look at this mess. It's like a tornado blew through here. Trees down everywhere. Or even worse, it's like some guy with a chainsaw came through here and just left them here, laying on the ground like some tree-cutting savage, which is exactly what so many properties are in desperate need of, to have some savage with a chainsaw come through and cut down the trees to make the property more valuable. I think a lot of people don't realize how much they can influence the value of their land by manipulating the trees on their land. Before we get into that, we need to figure out what happened here, why all these trees are on the ground, and find out who is responsible for it. I'll tell you how and why all this happened, but first, I have a confession to make. Because I cannot tell a lie, at least not in this case. It was I am the one who cut down all these trees with my new chainsaw. And I'll tell you why. I ain't never crossed a tree that didn't deserve it, and these ones definitely deserved it. That's why they're laying in chalk, fool. They were severely overcrowding each other. They had it coming to them, so I took them down, one by one. I laid them on the ground. With so many properties I see, the situation they're facing, they got too many trees growing together in the same spot. Trees don't like to all be trying to grow in the same spot. They like to be spread out, have their own places to grow, which I get that. I don't blame them for that. That gives them enough space to be able to grow up and express their full treeness and eventually grow up to be good-sized, respectable trees. Now you might be thinking, how is creating this horrendous mess going to greatly increase the value of my land? Let's go way over there. I'll show you. If someone with money was looking for their beautiful dream property they're willing to drop a big chunk of money on, do you think this is what they would be looking for? Is this the image you would imagine seeing on a high-end real estate listing? Can you imagine some rich person sending this picture to their other rich friends saying, hey, look what I just spent a whole bunch of money on. This is my dream property. What about this? Is this the kind of image wealthy people lay awake dreaming about, wishing, I sure wish I could have a property that looks like this? Or maybe this is it. Maybe this is the money shot. This is the one that's going to end up in the high-end real estate magazine. What do you think? Is this going to get people with money excited to buy? This is my property line here. That's someone else's property. When I drive from here into town, which is a long drive, when I look at other people's properties, this is more of what I see. Different versions of this. What I see is overcrowded, ugly, unhealthy fire trap properties. If a wildfire came through here, that side of the property line would likely be completely incinerated. For a lot of people, their property is the biggest investment they'll ever make. A lot of people look for ways to improve their property, make it more valuable, but a lot of times they avoid the one thing that could make a huge difference. Let's take a walk way down over there and take a look at something. Here we are way down here. Now compare this forest to the ones we just looked at. The trees in those places are the same age as the trees in this spot. What's the one difference between this spot and those other places? The one difference between this and this is years ago, some punk with a chainsaw came through and cut down most of the trees. He thinned them out. He left the best, healthiest trees, left them with good, healthy spacing, took out most of the trees, which were just overcrowded junk. He made money doing it, selling the wood. Now he has a forest that has grown up again so much, it's starting to overcrowd again. Now it's time to thin it out again and make even more money this time, because now the trees are even bigger and more valuable. Instead of doing what most people do, which is to sink money into their property to make it more valuable, this guy was making money, making his property more valuable. And he might be doing it again soon. Whoever this guy is, he might be onto something here. That is, if the timber market ever comes back to what it used to be, but that's another story. When he thinned this, that was back in the 90s when timber was very valuable. Even if the market doesn't turn around, it'll still have value, just not as much. What do you think would look better in a real estate magazine? Something like this, or something like this. If someone with money was out looking for a piece of property, would they get more excited walking through something like this or walking through something more like this? The main difference is, in this spot, years ago, some punk with a chainsaw came through here and cut most of the overcrowded trees down. Which brings us back to what we're doing here. If that punk with a chainsaw would have thinned out these weeny little oak trees years ago, this spot would now have much larger oak trees. With more space and resources, they would have been able to grow much faster and had the room to develop into well-formed trees. But back then, he was so busy thinning out those other trees and a bunch of other trees in a bunch of other spots, including on other properties, he never got around to these ones. He's only one person. There's only so much a person can do, especially when they get distracted from thinning out trees by going off chasing their fortune doing other things, women, and all the other things young punks like to get distracted by. But like that famous old saying goes, the best time to thin out weeny little oak trees was years ago. The next best time is right now. And that's what I did yesterday. I cut down all those oak trees with my semi-shiny, somewhat new chainsaw. If a prospective buyer who had money to spend on their dream property was walking through here, evaluating this spot for their home site, if nobody would have thinned this out years ago, they would have seen something more like this. What would a prospective buyer be more likely to put their money into? A property that looked like this, where nobody thinned out the trees, or a property like this, where somebody thinned out the trees? Now there's a view. There was no view in this spot until some punk with a chainsaw came along and thinned out the trees. These trees used to be those overcrowded, stupid-shaped trees until they were thinned out. Now they are just starting to get into their own, starting to develop good tree shape. Just because that punk came through here with a chainsaw a few years ago, instead of having this, we now have a nice view surrounded by good shaped trees. When I travel around, look at other properties around here, what I see mostly is properties choked with these overcrowded, stupid shaped trees. On those properties, people have their homes. For a lot of those people, that's the biggest investment they'll ever make, but they're neglecting to do the one thing that would turn that property into a much nicer property. Thin out those stupid trees so they can have nice trees, they can have a view. Maybe more importantly, since they are deciding to keep their property jam-packed with those overcrowded, stupid-shaped trees, when a wildfire comes through, those overcrowded forests are exactly what fuels the catastrophic fires that's going to wipe out their whole property, including their home. But this spot is different because years ago, some punk came through here with a chainsaw, thinned out all the stupid trees, left the good ones. Now when a wildfire comes through here, it's probably going to be more beneficial than harmful. Some people will probably argue with this concept, saying these non-merchantable type trees don't actually add value to the land. You can't quantify the value of these trees and add that to the land. In some ways, they do have a point there. If we're talking about sellable timber, you can quantify the value of the trees. You can cruise the place, find out how many board feet are on the place, find out what the trees are worth. Those trees do add monetary value to the property. On properties like these, the timber used to be a big part of the value, but in a lot of cases, the price of real estate has come up so much over the years, whereas the timber prices have not come up much. In some cases, they've gone down. The value in a property like this is no longer so much in the timber. Even though you may not be able to add the value of these non-timber trees to the value of the property, they do add value in other ways. The value of the trees on the property are no longer how much is this individual tree worth, how much money can I get for this tree if I cut it down. The value is how much does this tree contribute to the beauty of the place, Or how much are the trees on the property taking away from the value of the property? I would say 90%, maybe 95% of the trees here are detracting from the beauty and the value of this property. You can't even see your property. It's hard to even walk through it. I'm not very wide, and it's hard for me to even fit through a lot of the places in here. This is one of the reasons why beautiful properties go for such a premium, because they are somewhat of an exception in the forests of the West. This is kind of normal for our modern forests in the West. When you see on the news the massive forest fires that are burning through the West, this is one of the reasons those fires have become so destructive. It's because over the last 100 years, humans have converted so many of our forests in the West to this kind of nonsense. Almost all of the trees in here are not beautifying the property. Almost all of them are helping to uglify the property. When people with money are looking for a property to build their dream home on, I don't think this is what they are picturing. These trees will never grow up to be big, beautiful trees because they're all trying to grow in the same spot. It doesn't work that way. And they will likely never get a chance to, because catastrophic wildfire will likely come through here, kill everything before they get a chance. Having a few spots of thick forest can be good for wildlife. It can give them some cover, but to have the whole forest like this, look on the ground. It's so shaded out, there's hardly anything green on the ground for anything to eat. This is not a natural, healthy forest for wildlife. When people are looking for high-end rural properties, one of the things they look for in the listing is abundant wildlife. When I thinned my property, I opened it up so the ground can get some sunlight, enough to produce food for wildlife. I also left a few thick areas to provide cover for wildlife. Whenever I do videos about how we need to thin out the forest, we need to manage the forest, there are going to be those uninformed people who don't have experience with the forest who are going to say, leave nature alone, quit trying to meddle with nature, let nature take care of itself. What they don't understand is that is not nature, that's not natural, that's a human-created problem. It's up to us humans to fix these problems we created for nature. If you're confused by that and you don't understand that, you just need to go back and watch more of my videos. That should unconfuse you about that. Here are the benefits you get from going through your property with a chainsaw and cutting down most of the trees. Well, here's the benefits I have. If I was to ever want to sell this property, it would now be more appealing to a buyer that has more money to spend than it would have been if it was just ugly, overcrowded, stupid trees. The timber is now worth more because I thinned it out. The trees were able to grow into big trees. Now I no longer have to be so worried about wildfire. When a wildfire does come through here, not if, but when, instead of being destructive and killing everything, when it burns through here, it's more likely to be beneficial than destructive. It's also become a great place for wildlife. If you want to know more about the wildlife, go to my channel homepage, look at the playlist for my trail camera videos. That's 3 ways the place has become more valuable. But one of the big ones is, it's just made it a much nicer place for me to be. When I'm on my property, I don't want to be like this the whole time. When prospective buyers are looking at a property, I don't think they want to be like this either. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. I want to be more like this when I'm on my property. And I think a person with money who wants to buy a property would agree. They want to be more like this too. I'm surrounded by beautiful trees that you can actually see now. I have great views to look at that I did not have until after I thinned out the trees that were blocking the view. Obviously, or hopefully obviously, we're not talking about cutting down all the trees. We're just talking about thinning them out to more appropriate, more healthy stocking levels. Obviously, this only applies to those who have properties with too many trees. If you have a property that has the right amount of trees, obviously you don't need to be cutting down trees. If you have a property that doesn't have enough trees, you might think about planting more trees. You have to take things in their proper context. A lot of times on YouTube, it seems like people forget to take things in context. If you want to know more about how to do these kind of things, just subscribe to the channel, watch some of my videos. I go into how to do a lot of these things on a lot of my past videos, and I will probably continue to do so in future videos. I specify doing this with a chainsaw because I think ultimately that is the best tool for the job. I've seen some people try to do this with heavy equipment with disastrous results. In some cases, a skilled operator at the right time of the year can do a good job with heavy equipment. But most people don't understand how to do it right without doing disastrous disturbance to the soil and tree roots. If your objective is to do it quickly with no physical labor, that's where heavy equipment comes in. But you'll likely end up with a piece of property that looks like a piece of heavy equipment went through it. If your objective is to do a great job and have great long-term results, a person with a chainsaw is hard to beat. We have only gone over a few of the huge benefits of thinning out the trees on your property. There are so many more we haven't even gotten into. We're gonna have to save those for another video because this one's going long. I'm reminded of what my nephew Enzo said when he was just a little guy. I think he put it best when he said, "I done." If you're not completely appalled by this video, I think you should go watch one of these ones. But for now, I done.